be finding pieces of textual evidence in relation to our theme list that we've come up with for Of Mice and Men. Looking at this, we've done character charts on the different characters. Our goal now is to begin to slowly piece things together just for a better holistic understanding. So if you would for me, please, there's going to be moments in the beginning part of this video where you will need to stop and pause and set up your Google Doc. I want to have you guys submit this textual evidence list to me later, simply because it's going to be beneficial for you. You will fill this chart in based upon the activities that we have done prior, plus your knowledge of the novel. So there will be moments where I will leave things blank purposefully for you guys to fill those in. So we're going to look at textual evidence for theme. Okay. You guys created a theme list just the other day, various theme topics. Let's actually go ahead and set up our Google Docs page. So if you have not opened up a brand new Google Doc, please do so. I'm going to go to Insert, go down to Table, and let me go for right now, let's go 5. 1, 2, 3. Actually, let's go 4. 4 across, and let's do 5 down. Okay. So I've created this chart, and what we're going to do is we're going to identify the theme word, okay, that we came up with. I want to identify some sort of character that's connected to that theme or experiencing that theme. And then what we're going to do is we're going to get 2 pieces of textual evidence. Textual evidence are quotes or paraphrases or chunks from the novel that that connect to our character and our theme. So it's kind of like proving your point. It's essentially saying, hey, I think there is friendship in the novel. That's one of our theme words. Here's the characters who experience friendship. Here's some examples from the text where they show that. So if you would, go ahead and set this up, pause the video. You are going to set up this chart. You've got theme, character or characters, textual evidence, and then textual evidence. We're going to get 2 spots for that. Okay. Take a moment, pause, set that up. I am going to make, because this is our header, I'm going to make this section bold. You don't have to do that as long as you're able to tell the difference. First and foremost, let's go ahead and list some of our themes that we came up with. Okay. Take a moment, begin to put those into this box here. We've got 4 boxes. I'm going to definitely say that you should have like friendship, okay, and loneliness. Okay. Whoops. Loneliness. We could talk about the American dream. We could talk about second chances, because Lenny and George had a second chance. Friendship. The pursuing your goals. Maybe that's one. Will you take a moment from the list? Let's make sure that we at least have friendship and we at least have loneliness. Okay. And then let's you fill in those other 2. Okay. Now our goal is to find characters. Okay. So there could be multiple characters that experience this. Obviously, our big one for friendship is George and Lenny. Okay. There's lots of characters who experience loneliness. Okay. Let's think off the top of our head. Who is lonely? I know Curly's wife is lonely. She's very lonely. What I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to come in here. Oops, I don't want the video. I'm going to come in here and I'm actually going to insert. What I'm going to do is right click and I'm going to insert a row below because there's other characters that are lonely too. Okay. George is extremely lonely. Okay. Let me add in another row. Did you see how I did that? I just highlighted it, right clicked, and I'm going to go down here to insert row below. You can also do that if you come up here to insert and then you can scroll down. There's a way to do another line. insert another line. I'm going to also put Lenny. You may have put down Candy. Candy's pretty lonely, especially after what happened in chapter 3. You could probably put down Crooks if you've read ahead to chapter 4. Crooks is very lonely. George and Lenny are primarily two. Even though they have each other, it's more of a mental loneliness. George is unable to relate to Lenny. Lenny is unable to provide George with the affirmation and kind of like the camaraderie. It's more of like a parent, like child caretaker situation between the two. I think that's good so far. If you want to add Candy, you could add Candy. Candy is pretty lonely as well. Okay. So our goal now is to find a piece of textual evidence. Okay. Something that relates to our text. So if I go over to our classes, I'm going to click on my first period over here. We're reading of Mice and Men as well. All freshman classes are reading of Mice and Men. Let's see here. Where's my text? Actually, let me go back over here. Excuse me one moment. I'm going to pull up my Of Mice and Men text so that I have it. You will need to pull up your text as well. Here we go. English 9 Of Mice and Men. Look at all this stuff I've got. Holy cow, Mr. Cordes, you have a lot. Here we go. I've got my Of Mice and Men story. Okay. So I'm going to go through here and I'm going to find some sort of piece. I'm going to find a piece of textual evidence that's going to help us talk about George and Lenny and friendship. So if that's my very first, let me come back over here. If George and Lenny is what I'm going to talk about for friendship, I need to find a piece of textual evidence to support that. Okay. So if I come back over here, let's see. And I find they begin to talk about the rabbits. They begin to talk about, and I got you, George. I'm going to find that spot where they begin to talk about their dreams. They begin to talk about the farm. His face grew tight. I said it. Oh, this is when they were arguing about the beans and ketchup. If I come down here, they're going to be talking about the hell with them rabbits. And good. There'll be beans for 4 men. I'm going to find the place where we'll get a little. Oh, here it is. And living off the fat of the land. That encompasses their dreams. I'm going to write that down over here. And living off the fat of the land, which really just means that they get to own their own land. That was the part that was perfect timing. This is right now I'm on page 7. So I'm going to mark down that this is page 7, just so I have a reference point. You could put in something else, maybe the part where George tells Lenny, no, you can't go off living in a cave. You need to stay with me. Maybe there was the part in chapter 2 where George says, I take care of, they're explaining to the boss and George says, no, I take care of Lenny. His Aunt Clara died and I'm taking care of him. Maybe you want to put in that. Take a moment, pause the video. I need you to fill in this part for George and Lenny's friendship. Okay, take a moment and pause. Okay. And now we're going to move on. So you filled in this box. Let's fill in some items for George and Lenny. Now, for loneliness concerning George, Lenny, Curly's wife, and Candy. George and Lenny, filling that in for loneliness may be a little bit more difficult as we get through chapter 3, simply because it's mental. Okay, that right there is the difficult part of them just being like, I'm not like it's an emotional thing that they see. It's not necessarily outward. So for George and Lenny, that might be a little bit more difficult. There is the part where George says, I could do whatever I want and go to a cat house and no one would ever bother me. And Lenny says I'll go live off in a cave. That kind of encompasses their idea of not only their friendship, but also the kind of tension that they really don't understand each other. Lenny doesn't really understand George's frustration, and George doesn't understand Lenny's simplicity. And so there's tension between the two. Okay. Curly's wife, let's find a quote for that. I love chapter 2. Chapter 2 is where she's first introduced. I believe she's in chapter 3 as well. Let me go back over here. So chapter 2 is the bunkhouse. They are introducing, she comes in. This is where she arches her back. She's like, oh, nobody can blame a person for looking. I was just here. Okay. And then let me get to chapter 3. Here we go, chapter 3. They begin to have conversations. Slim is here. George is coming in. They're having a calm conversation in the bunkhouse. Okay. He's a nice fella. Yep. He doesn't mean this. Maybe this might coincide with how George feels. Because, of course, Lenny is a goddamn nuisance most of the time. But you once get to going around him, you can't get rid of him. Maybe that describes George's loneliness right there on page 20. That would be a good one for George's loneliness if you want to incorporate that one. He ain't mean. He ain't never been mean. So he begins to tell Slim. He begins to open up a little bit more to Slim. You see Candy in here. Candy talking about his dog, and they tell how the dog is not fit anymore. There's lots of foreshadowing elements in chapter 3 that move on later. I won't spoil anything at this moment. Curly's wife, she's lonely. I'm going to put the part down from chapter 2 where she says, nobody can blame a person for looking. Okay. Which kind of means like it does sound flirty, but in reality, she's just kind of looking for attention. Like, oh, I thought he was here. I guess I should look someplace else, right? She's kind of stalling so that she has more time. I believe in chapter 4, there's even a moment where she kind of has a confrontation with some of the men. She's like, I can't talk to nobody. Everyone can talk, and I have nothing to say. And she just kind of indicates her loneliness. We'll see more of her loneliness in chapter 5. And understand who she is. But take a moment. Your goal right now is to find a piece of textual evidence for George, find a piece of textual evidence for Lenny, where he feels lonely, and then for Candy, where he feels lonely as well. So find that quote. Also make sure that you put the page number down. I would suggest getting at least these 3 sections completed. Okay. If you can find an additional one, bravo, but I'm looking for you to complete at least those. And then if you have another theme word, will you please fill in that last line as well? Will you please make sure, what is that theme word? Maybe it's finding your dreams, hardworking. Maybe the theme that you think is the idea of separation and how no one is really connected to each other, even though they're in close proximity, right? There's separation between Candy and his dog. There's separation between George and Lenny because of the way that they can't necessarily relate. Look for those other components for our text, and you're going to fill in those items right here. Okay. What is the piece of textual evidence you have for George, Lenny, and Candy in regards to loneliness? And then find that other theme word that you have right here and add it in. Okay. If you go through and you find another one, please add it to this column. If you find another item for friendship, please add that in. Okay. Fill in this chart so that you have quality textual evidence as we move into our writing, because you will use these to put together your writing components. Okay. If you do have questions or concerns, let me know. Otherwise, happy hunting, happy textual evidence hunting. I'll talk to you guys later.